Hey guys. All right, the next thing I want to go over today is, first of all, steering and suspension component identification. That's going to be important so that you can go ahead and check steering and suspension on your vehicle. Now, the check off that we have on the skill sheet is to grease steering and suspension. There is not one on there for checking steering and suspension. But if you do go ahead and check steering and suspension, I will flip it over to the back of your sheet and I will write it down, and then I will check it off for you doing so, because it is an important part of working on and inspecting your vehicle. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to raise that vehicle up so that the tire is about chest height, okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to shake the tire side to side. Now, I'm not pushing with both hands and pulling out with both hands. I'm alternating. So when I shake a tire or perform what we call a vehicle shakedown, I'm going to shake that tire and alternate left to right, okay? Same thing with up and down. So anytime the vehicle's in the air, I should be doing what we call a shakedown. Shake the tire side to side, shake the tire up and down. If I feel any play in any of the components, I should be getting someone to walk under there with a flashlight to see if they can tell which component is moving. So here's what I mean by that. Shake it side to side. I normally grab in my tire treads, shake it side to side, see if I feel anything, shake it up and down, see if I feel anything. On this one, I'm feeling a little bit of movement up and down. So when you guys get into the lab, if you're working on the S10, just shake it up and down and see if you can feel that movement that's there, right? Just from experience, to me, that feels like we have a wheel bearing that's a little bit loose, okay? So that's how we would go ahead and shake it down or check steering and suspension when we raise the vehicle in the air. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'll raise it all the way up, and then we'll go through some component identification. All right, I'm going to do my best to go through component identification with you all using a video. Obviously, we got really good at this during COVID, and I did a lot of these for students my first year here as we were navigating COVID. So when I shake my tire side to side, here are the components that I'm checking, okay? Tie rod ends, here and here. This is an inner tie rod end, and you can see that there's a boot there with some grease coming out of it. And then this is going to be the outer tie rod end, which is closest to the tire. All right, if I back up, you can kind of see where those components are located. If I go to the other side of the vehicle, I can see that I have the same, an inner tie rod end as well as an outer tie rod end. We are looking for any play in this ball and socket joint, okay? What does a tie rod end do? Well, if I were to look way up here, if you see that orange little boot there, that is actually coming down from your steering wheel, okay? So we have a steering shaft that goes from the steering wheel to your power steering gearbox, which is located right here, okay? Then from your power steering gearbox, we have a pitman arm attached to a center link, and then attached to an idler arm. If you look at the idler arm, its only job is to hold that center link up, okay? This type of steering system is called a parallelogram style steering system, which makes sense, right? If I step back and look at it, everything looks parallel from my idler arm to my pitman arm to my center link to my tie rod ends, right? So it kind of makes sense. Everything looks parallel. And if you look at these components, they actually all have little grease fittings, right? That I could grab a grease gun and I could go ahead and grease these fittings up. So anytime we do an oil change, it's imperative that we're greasing the grease fittings on our tie rod ends, center link, idler arm, and pitman arm, okay? Not every steering and suspension system is going to look like this. But when I'm shaking that tire side to side, all of the components I just showed you are being checked, all right? If I feel any play when I shake side to side, I need to come underneath and look at all of those components. Once again, outer tie rod end, inner tie rod end, pitman arm, idler arm, outer tie rod end again, and inner tie rod end, okay? So then maybe you're thinking, well, Mr. Spencer, if you shake the tire up and down, what the heck are we checking? So if you look way in here, and I'll try and get a light so you can see that there's a boot right about here where my finger is. I'll shine a light again. That is what we call a lower ball joint. And then if you look up top, that is called an upper ball joint. You can see the boot there. Once again, both of them are ball and socket joints, okay? And they are connecting our control arms here, lower control arm and upper control arm, to our steering knuckle, which oddly enough, if you look at the steering knuckle, our outer tie rod end is also attached to that. So the steering knuckle is going to allow us a spot to attach our tire to and wheel. Also, it's going to allow us to be able to turn the vehicle. If you look there, you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so once again, upper ball joint, lower ball joint, outer tie rod end. So when I go ahead and shake this up and down, I am checking the ball joints on this style of suspension system. Okay, so now we know that what the components are. You've been able to see your grease fittings on every one of the components: lower ball joint, outer tie rod end, inner tie rod end, idler arm and center link, and your pitman arm, right? And outer tie rod end on the left, inner tie rod end on the left as well, all right? So we're gonna take a quick walk. We're gonna go to the tool room and we're going to find where our grease guns are located so that when you go ahead and do this, you know exactly where the tools are that you need. As I walk straight in, there are 3 grease guns. If you are just greasing basic steering suspension systems, grab the grease gun on the left, okay? You can see the type of fitting that we have on this grease gun that will actually attach to what we call the grease zert or fitting. This is a needle greaser. You won't use it very often, but if we do run into an issue where we need it, I will show you how to use that, all right? So I'll grab my grease gun, go back underneath the vehicle. I'm probably gonna pause this just for a second so that I can put my phone back on the stand so that I can go ahead and show you how to grease. So give me 1 second. All right, I lowered this vehicle down just for purpose of the video. Obviously, if you guys are doing this, you can keep the vehicle all the way up in the air. I don't want you having to crouch, which is what I've mentioned before. So what I zoomed in on right now is I am zoomed in on our right outer tie rod end. So right side of the vehicle, remember we always signify the vehicle or designate it as if we're sitting in the driver's seat. So left side would be my driver's side, right side would be my passenger side, okay? When you do this, you do not need a whole heck of a lot of grease. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my grease gun. All right, I am going to go ahead and attach it to my fitting, and then I can go ahead and squeeze the handle, okay? I am squeezing the handle just till that boot expands. So if you saw me do it, I only squeezed that handle really about one good time when it actually had grease in it. I squeezed it twice, but it had to get the grease primed in the grease gun. But other than that, I'm really only squeezing it once on this S10. That is all you need to do, okay? So once again, I would want to grease my outer tie rod ends here and here, my ball joints here and here, my center link here, my idler arm here, and then get back a little bit so we can focus, and then my pitman arm right there. Okay, a little bit blurry, but sorry about that. So those are the things that I want to grease on this S10. All right, so if you go ahead and do that, you will get a check off. You can do it on your own vehicle as you wish. Obviously, it's a good maintenance item to do anyway. All right, so now we've gone over the different steering and suspension components, how to check them doing a shakedown, and how to grease them, okay? There will be one more video that I'm going to show, but other than that, we have covered steering and suspension and how to grease the components.